Good evening and welcome to Poland Daily. I'm Nicholas Richardson and this is the news. Donald Trump is not coming to Poland for the commemoration of the 80th anniversary of the outbreak of the Second World War. The United States President announced his decision yesterday evening. The reason for the postponement of his visit is Hurricane Dorian, which is approaching the Florida coast. In place of Trump, the United States will be represented by the Vice President, Mike Pence. The head of the Polish President's office, Krzysztof Szczerski, said today that he hoped a new date for Donald Trump's visit to Poland would be announced next week.
Przygotowania trwały od kilku tygodni. Od kilku dni w Warszawie są służby, które ochraniają amerykańskiego przywódcę.
The preparations for the arrival of the American president have been well underway for a few days. There's been much more police on the streets of Warsaw, and the two armored limousines of Donald Trump have already arrived as well. There's just one problem. The US president himself won't be attending the 80th anniversary of the outbreak of the Second World War, a decision he personally informed the Polish president Andrzej Duda about on the phone. Trump will be staying in the U.S. due to the emergency situation in the south of the country, namely in Florida, where a dangerous hurricane is heading. Politicians of the Law and Justice Party were saddened by the unexpected change of plans, but also expressed their understanding and unity with the American head of state in times of crisis.
Jak mówią, ze smutkiem przyjmują te decyzje.
To ensure that all resources of the federal government are focused on the arriving storm, I have decided to send our Vice President, Mike Pence, to Poland this weekend in my place. It's something very important for me to be here. The storm looks like it could be a very, very big one indeed. And Mike will be going. I've just spoken to President Duda of Poland and expressed him my warmest wishes and the wishes of the American people. Our highest priority is the safety and security of the people in the path of the hurricane, and I will be rescheduling my trip to Poland in the near future.
I think it's safe to say that we will be able to announce a new date of the visit sometime next week. We have sent our proposed dates today, and now we're waiting for the White House to respond.
Z naszej strony możliwe daty.
Rozumiem decyzję pana prezydenta.
I fully understand President Trump's decision. One of his election slogans was America's First. Matters of the United States are naturally the most important matters to the American president, and like I said, I fully respect and understand it.
Rozumiem, ja to doceniam i niezwykle szanuję.
Poland is awaiting the arrival of US Vice President Mike Pence. John Bolton, President Trump's national security advisor, is already here. Today, Bolton, who is one of Trump's closest associates, discussed Polish-American security with the Polish Defense Minister, Mariusz Błaszczak.
Poland has been an outstanding defense partner for the United States, an outstanding member of NATO, committed to spending more than 2% of its gross domestic product on defense and more than 20% of the total defense budget on investment. They've made the decision to purchase some extraordinarily advanced weapon systems from us, including the F-35. We think this is critical for the greater cooperation, interoperability of all of NATO forces, especially in this geographic location. So the defense cooperation between the United States and Poland is broad and deep, and every prospect is it will get even broader and even deeper, which we welcome.
Well, we talked about a number of issues. We talked also about the U.S. locations of U.S. troops in Poland. There are already 6. We have talked about the 7th one, which means we still have some time to reach the final conclusions. I also, on behalf of the Polish government, expressed my deep appreciation for the fact that Vice President Mike Pence will come to Poland to also be here present during the 80th anniversary of the beginning of World War II. In a couple of days, on Sunday, we will remember those tragic days, especially for the civilian population. As an effect of the Second World War, 6 million people were murdered. Today we have different times. Today Poland is a free country, but we have to take care of our security on a daily basis.
After yesterday's meeting of the crisis staff to discuss the ecological disaster on the river Vistula, caused by the failure of the Czajka wastewater treatment plant in Warsaw, Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki announced that the government would take action to combat the disaster. The army will most likely take part in the operation. The huge amount of sewage that is flowing into the Vistula is a serious threat to the natural environment of the river.
We are dealing with a real crisis. We are threatened by an ecological disaster, a potentially epidemiological one. We have received information from the Warsaw City Hall that the repairs can take several weeks. This is a very serious threat to all people who draw water from the Vistula River. We presented the Warsaw authorities with a proposal to help build an alternative pipeline to pump sewage from the left bank to the right bank to reach the Czajka sewage treatment plant. We are very happy that the Warsaw authorities have decided to accept this help. I am very happy, above all, that the government took all my statements into account. From the beginning of this disaster, I was repeating that, first of all, you need to cooperate and cope with the failure itself. It is only then that the time will come to discuss exactly what happened and draw any conclusions. We cannot underestimate this situation. We know that the discharge of sewage into the Vistula can last for weeks, which may endanger not only the Vistula as an ecological system, which may cause an ecological catastrophe, but it may also endanger human health. Working on removing the effects of this catastrophe will be carried out for many weeks, if not months. What we can do today is to stop this catastrophe so that nobody suffers from it. This is what the fight is all about.
Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki today presented in Parliament a bill to reduce personal income tax. This will be achieved by reducing labour costs through doubling the allowable tax deductible costs for employees, as well as reducing the rate of value-added tax from 18% to 17%.
Projekt obniżki podatku PIT.
The personal income tax reduction project consists of two very important parts. The first is a reduction of about 6% from 18 to 17 percentage points, which is 1 percentage point of the personal income tax for all citizens, but also for all pensioners. In its entirety, the reduction will apply to 25 million Poles. But there is also the second part, which is raising tax-deductible costs. And here there is a little puzzle again. Which government, and so which party, increased tax-deductible costs and thus de facto reduced the tax for our citizens in the past? Again, it was the Law and Justice government more than 10 years ago.
That's the news. Thank you for watching. Stay with us for Poland Daily Weather and the business, and more programmes. But from me, it's have a good night and a better tomorrow.
I'm Aleksandra Zarzycka and welcome to Poland Daily Weather. Let's take a look at the forecast for tonight. Cloudless sky in large parts of the country. Some rain is expected on the south, and there we will see thunderstorms as well. Stormy weather also over Białystok. The temperature will range from 16 to 20 degrees. And now over to tomorrow. Sunny weather in most regions. Storm and rain will appear around Rzeszów, Kraków and over Olsztyn and Gdynia. On the south we will see the highest temperature 34 degrees in Kraków and Wrocław. A minimum will be 25 in Koszalin. The hot weather will continue in the following 3 days. Sunday will be equally scorching. Temperature will hover around 32 degrees. On Monday, weather will break down and we are expecting loads of rainfalls and storms. Temperature will drop to 18 degrees on the west. And on Tuesday, temperature will still low, but sky will clear up. Thank you for watching and goodbye.
Poland Daily Business Edition. Our guest tonight is Artur Wróblewski, PhD of Lazarski University. Sir, welcome to the show.
Hello, thank you for hosting me.
One big event in front of us on the break between end of August, beginning of September, Poland will host Donald Trump and world leaders who will gather here to remember the 18th anniversary of the outbreak of the Second World War. This is obviously a very important event, and this will be the single longest visit of American president in Poland, as far as I can remember. What are Polish expectations from that event?
Of course, it's a huge prestige for Poland because it's not regular, normal and standard in the American diplomacy that American president is traveling to one country so often and we have so big intensity of contacts. Let's remember that even this week Polish Minister of Foreign Affairs was in New York. Poland is now participating very actively and now running the Security Council of the United Nations. So we have on many levels huge intensity of contacts. But I believe that President Trump and the White House is considering Poland as a very important actor in the European Union, besides the United Kingdom. The United Kingdom is heading for a special and very special now relationship with the United States after the Brexit will be executed on October 31st. And Poland is also so it will be like outside of the European Union and very close because of Boris Johnson, if he survives, of course, it will be very close ally now of the United States outside of the European Union, and probably there will be a free trade deal signed between the United States and the United Kingdom. And Poland is another very friendly country, very friendly from American perspective, especially now when those relations between France, Germany and the United States are a little bit disturbed. But also, besides this aspect of European Union, Poland and the United States, we have other important aspects for President Trump and his advisors. I believe that this visit and his speech in Warsaw to some extent will be hooked up into his presidential campaign, because President Trump now is running for re-election and he needs votes. He needs nice pictures from Europe. So I believe that this visit will be well covered by friendly to President Trump mass media, and he will give a nice speech which will be liked by the United States citizens with Polish roots. And we know that in 3 states where President Trump won, Pennsylvania, Michigan and Wisconsin, we have almost 9-8% of population with Polish roots, with rights to vote. And we know that in those 3 swing states 4 years ago, President Trump or candidate Trump won by only 77,000 votes.
And he was the first American politician since decades who turned to Polish American voters and expressed them and like met them directly. He organized that meeting in Chicago with Polish Congress.
He talked to Mr. Frank Spula, the head of Polish American
we think
Congress.
About Mr. Frank Spula, yes.
Of course, in September of 1916, but he met him, he talked directly to Polish voters, potential voters, and he promised some things, including the special status for Poland or the incorporation of Poland into a visa waiver program.
Right now, the special status of Poland means that we are outside of this program, unlike other countries in Europe.
No, we are in the group of 4 states. We have Romania, Bulgaria, Cyprus, and something else, and Poland. But we have a huge chance now that after this budgetary year ends in September 30, we will hear from President Trump and the State Department that Poland will qualify to this group of 38 states incorporated in visa waiver program. Why? Because President Trump promised on June 12th, when he talked to President Duda in Washington, he said, I promise, I believe that in 90 days Poland will fulfill this requirement of less than 3%
and we see a number of
rate.
Agreements being signed right now by Poland and the United States in order to...
Mr. Wolf from the Homeland Security Department signed an agreement on border security with our ambassador in Washington, Mr. Wilczek.
So the question
is... It's a matter of time, not a matter if, but a matter...
the economical relationships between Poland and the United States? Will it increase the volume of Polish trade to the United States?
After we are included in this visa? Not really, because, look, almost all people who are approaching American consul in Krakow or in Warsaw are being accepted and getting American visa, even for 10 years. Last year, the refusal rate was 4.99, I believe, %. 2 years ago, it was 5.9. So we are, like 100 people comes to the American consulate and only 5 people are just living without visa. So almost everybody is now getting American visa. So we have already very good economic relations, and you can, if you want visa, visa, to go just to talk about business, you can go and get this visa without any problem. For 90 days, you can go to the United States, stay there, do business, and come back. So I believe that there will be no dramatic increase of trade volume, but of course, it's a matter more of prestige and a symbolic issue for Poles, because we are the closest, one of the closest allies besides United Kingdom or Israel, for example, to the United States. That's why we really should eventually solve this problem once and for all.
Artur Wróblewski of Łazarski University, sir. Thank you very much for this conversation. And that was it for tonight's Poland Daily Business.
Welcome back to Poland Daily Weather. Let's take a look at the forecast for tomorrow. Sunny weather in most regions. Storm and rain will appear around Rzeszów, Kraków and over Olsztyn and Gdynia. On the south we will see the highest temperature, 34 degrees in Kraków and Wrocław. A minimum will be 25 in Koszalin. And now let's see tomorrow's forecast for the continent. Loads of sun almost in the whole continent. In Central Europe, we will see temperatures which will hover between 26 and 28 degrees. Sun will dominate on south of Europe, and there we will notice the highest temperature, even 34 degrees. Stormy weather will appear in Central and on Western Europe. Thank you for watching and goodbye.
Today my guest is an unquestionable star of the Polish music scene. Everyone knows songs like Jolka and Bal Wszystkich Świętych. Please welcome Krzysztof Cugowski, who still sings and doesn't want to stop. Good evening, and thank you so much for accepting our invitation.
Thank you for inviting me. Of course I still sing, but not everyone is happy about it.
Let's start with the band Budka Suflera that you spent over 40 years on stage with. The band was active until 2014, so you'll probably not be surprised if I ask what happened. The band was so popular.
Zawsze musi być ten moment końcowy i nie ma co się oszukiwać, nic nie trwa wiecznie.
There is no need to lie to ourselves. There always has to be the end of something. Nothing lasts forever, and it's better to end something when you're still famous, when you're still in good shape physically and artistically, than to wait until we're not going to feel that good. At our age, you can lose your health anytime, and we didn't want to wait for it. In my opinion, we ended it the best way we could. It's not that common for an artist to end his career like we did. We played 100 concerts in 2014. We gave concerts on the biggest stages in Poland, including the Taron Arena in Krakow, where we played one of our first concerts. This is the biggest arena in Poland. All the tickets were sold out. We performed for over 18,000 people. We said goodbye to our fans, just like a serious artist should always do.
Z publicznością tak, jak powinien się żegnać poważny.
So, quoting the band Perfect, one should know when it's time to leave the stage undefeated.
Yes, these are the best words. They fit here perfectly.
Najlepszy komentarz.
You established the band Budka Suflera in 1969. What's interesting is that you didn't want to be the vocalist.
Znaczy, to był w ogóle przypadek, bo to ja spotkałem dwóch kolegów, z którymi wspólnie...
That was a coincidence. I met two friends who we established the band with at my another friend's house. He was fixing tape recorders at the time. I'm not going to talk about it because it's a waste of my time and my nerves, because every time I hear about the times of communism in Poland, it makes me sick.
Przypominam PRL, to od razu robi mi się niedobrze.
What did the life of a rock and roll star look like back then? Now we can see everything on the internet. We see how the lives of celebrities look like.
Czasy, kiedy nie było instrumentów, nie było strun do gitary, nie było pałek dla perkusisty, nie było nic.
At that time, there were no instruments, there were no guitar strings, no drumsticks. There was nothing. A guitar player has a guitar called samba made in Poland. From an instrument maker point of view, the guitar was useless. You couldn't use it as an electric guitar. And this friend, thanks to whom I met the other two friends, were making pickups for guitars. He was making it out of boxes from a lozenge called Acorn to do so, and they were fitting perfectly. With a pickup, this guitar was ready to play on. But I don't want to look back and talk about those times. The only good thing was that I was 20, and I think that this is the only reason why this time was so beautiful. I was 20. Everyone of my age knows what I'm talking about. This is a completely different thing. People should always be 20.
No to był plus absolutny. To były piękne czasy. Miałem 20 lat.
The albums of Budka Suflera were selling out in big numbers. There were over 300 concerts in one year, and over 1 million copies. The Nic nie boli tak jak życie album was the best-selling album in the history of Polish music. It's possible to achieve something like that again, isn't it?
I ten rekord, ten rekord zostanie na zawsze. Także w związku z tym...
This record will stay in our memory forever. Historically, we'll always be the record holders. The albums are 2 times cheaper now. The gold album costs 15,000 right now. That's a joke. It was worth 150,000 before.
Wtedy była za 150.
Ona przychodzi chytrze, bez ostrzeżeń grób i grób. Krzyczy pękniętą liną.
Zresztą to było takie apogeum płyty CD I potem już...
But back then, CDs were very popular. Their popularity started to fall gradually. Right now, there are no CD stores anymore. The internet took over. I think that USB flash drives or something else will become a basic data storage device. People don't necessarily want to have a better quality. People are more and more lazy. And that's how it is. The USB flash drives or MP3 players, these devices don't let you listen to music, but listen to buzzing. But for people, it's no difference. What's more, there are not as many things on MP3 players or on CDs as on phonograph records. Everything is compressed and so on. But that's how it is, and we're not going to fight with the mainstream.
Mainstreamowi, także spokojnie.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm your host Benjamin Lee, and welcome to another episode of Poland Daily History. Today we are in the Praga district of Warsaw, in front of a statue of one of the great war heroes of the Polish Bolshevik War, Father Ignacy Skorupka. This statue is located right here, as he served this very church, and it was from here that his unit set out to confront the enemy. In early August of 1920, the Soviet Red Army was closing in on Warsaw. They were only a couple hundred kilometers away from linking arms with the Soviet revolutionary forces of Germany, Austria, and Hungary. Join us as we explore the Polish Bolshevik War, the Battle of Warsaw, and its impact on all of Europe. So in every war there were historical figures, those who rose above the ranks and those truly became immortalized throughout history. And I was wondering, who are some of the bigger profiles when it comes to the Polish Bolshevik War?
Tak, możemy tu powiedzieć, że ta wojna przyniosła Polsce nowych bohaterów. I to jakby w trzech dziedzinach. No, pierwszą grupę stanowią ci, którzy jak ksiądz Skorupka zginęli.
Yes, we can say that this war created new Polish heroes in three distinct areas. The first group consists of those who, like Father Skorupka, died leading an attack or defending individual spots. Captain Pogonowski and others like him are the sacrifice Poland has made to save its sovereignty. The second group, of course, are the commanders, of whom virtually all survived because they commanded huge armies. Well, there is always the question, who is the father of victory? As we know, success has many fathers, only a defeat is an orphan. Unfortunately, National Democracy tried to take away Piłsudski's rank and somehow split the winners into pieces. However, one very important statement contradicts this, because if we were to fail, who would be guilty? The former commander-in-chief would be responsible. He commanded everything. So since we have won, he has won it. But there is no doubt that General Rozwadowski has made a huge contribution, only that he does not replace the commander, just as the famous chief of staff in Napoleon's army, Marshal Berthier, never replaced the chief himself. The chief showed what was needed, and the chief of staff was supposed to implement changes. The same was seen here, in the documents that have survived to this day, created by General Rozwadowski. In many points there is an annotation that the actions were made in accordance with the command of the Commander-in-Chief. So the Commander-in-Chief recommended, he set the direction, this is the implementation of his words. The cooperation of the fathers of victory gave us such a huge success. The third hero is General Sikorski, who then became a leading star, and during the Second World War he would be the commander of the Polish armed forces. He phenomenally commanded the army on the left wing. There he led to a breakdown, risking everything. He had his back exposed, he was stood with his back to the Bolshevik army by defeating another army. Fortunately, the Bolsheviks did not realize it, and we left this operation completely. The Battle of Wgra, the Battle of Vistula, and the Battle of Wieprz were such a stop line that blocked the road. And finally, General Józef Haller, who was also a big winner of this war, except that he did not show deep ambitions. He was a great organizer. He was a great populist. He had a beautiful gift of speaking, and he mobilized Poles to the volunteer army. He was the commander-in-chief of the volunteer army, but of course not an active army. And as such an inspiration, he fulfilled his role well. While in the field, unfortunately, he was an unfortunate commander, and he failed to win a significant number of battles during the First World War. Anyway, he commanded the 2nd Brigade and was the second in command overall. The next character, very important, is the close associate of Marshal Józef Piłsudski, General Lucjan Żeligowski, who, with the Iron Brigade, right here, using city buses, just like in Paris during the First World War, brought the 11th Shooters Division to the battlefield in the evening. There was a dramatic situation because the machine guns overheated and got jammed. These machines have such an unfortunate fault that the bullets get stuck and the rifles can thus become useless. Polish soldiers panicked, withdrew and abandoned their equipment. At the time, General Żeligowski's troops arrived and replaced them. Because they were very strong in spirit, they rushed to bayonets and stopped, and then pushed the Bolsheviks out of Radzymin. The hero of this war is also General Juliusz Rommel, who formed a huge cavalry unit, commanded the main attack of the 10th Cavalry Regiment, which crushed Budyonny's Cossacks. And so, from General Iwaszkiewicz, who also came from the eastern borderlands, to the Ukrainian generals, Bezruczko, Owsienko, and a few others who accompanied until the end of the Polish army, they were allies who did not betray us.
Do końca armii polskiej. To był sojusznik, który nas nie zdradził.
So now we know a little bit more about the prominent figures on the Polish side. I was wondering if you can tell me a little bit about the Russian side of things, especially I know some prominent figures involved, like Stalin, for example, was pretty big. And who are the other people and what did they accomplish?
Pamiętajmy, że Stalin był tak zwanym oficerem politycznym. Czasami ważniejszym od głównego dowódcy. Potrafił zmieniać jego decyzje.
Let us remember that Stalin was a so-called political officer, sometimes more important than the main commander. He could change his decisions, watch over the political goals and truthfulness of a given commander so that he would not turn out to be a traitor. Trotsky, a Russian Jew in command of the entire Soviet armed forces at the time, who was actually named Leyba Bronstein, but officially used the name of Leon Trotsky, was both the Minister of Foreign Affairs and the organizer of the so-called Red Army, which was the Workers' and Peasants' Army. His most important commander on the Western Front was Marshal Mikhail Tukhachevsky, who was given the command of both wings of his army at the last moment. One was heading towards Warsaw and the Vistula, and the other towards Lviv. Unfortunately, Stalin changed Tukhachevsky's orders. He wanted to have his own success, earn his own glory, and instead of going to Berlin through Warsaw, because that was the original plan, the German Revolution was more important than the lack of revolution in Poland. It was the disregard of Poles that took revenge on Bolsheviks, and in turn, Stalin wanted to go through Lviv to help the fallen Hungarian Revolution, where thousands of Bolsheviks were plotting something underground. Therefore, somewhere between Lviv and Warsaw, a huge hole was created, which was used by Poles without fail. Were it not for this competition, if these commanders listened to the main commander, it is possible that it would be more difficult for Poland to succeed, and perhaps it would be impossible. But we cooperated well enough. Let us remember that almost all Austrian intelligence went to the Polish army. Poles had the best cryptologists and deciphers. We were able to decipher the Soviet messages by breaking their cipher faster than the Soviets themselves. Anyway, this was done using a comb, breaking every third tooth, and thus the word divizia was found, which has the letter I in it 3 times. In this way, the broken code visualized the mess in the Soviet command, which we used very well. As we know, a battle can be won, but a party that makes mistakes is leading itself into a catastrophe. We simply made great use of these errors. Finally, it should be added that all of the marshals, and there were 7, 5 of them died at the hands of Stalin. They were those who accused Stalin of being the culprit of the defeat. Only those of his close allies, the then legendary Budyonny and Voroshilov, survived, and Generals Blicher, Tuchachevsky, Sergeyev, and a few others were killed. These commanders, Yakir or Brishkan, were also murdered in 1937 as guilty of the defeat with Poles. Stalin completed the Battle of Warsaw, murdering its Soviet commanders. As we know, the Soviet army was therefore unable to begin the Second World War, but that's another story.
Sowiecka dzięki temu nie była zdolna do przystąpienia do II wojny światowej, ale to już inna historia.
The Battle of Warsaw was the decisive point of the Polish-Bolshevik War. It saved Europe from an imminent communist invasion and gave Poland a vital 20 years as an independent state before the outbreak of the Second World War. I'm your host, Benjamin Lee, and I'll see you next time on Poland Daily History.
Hello, everybody. It's There's a Will Time, the show that you love to watch, but you have to find it first. At any rate, here is Nicholas Richardson with me. Of course, you have to find it. It's on the internet.
I know where to look. That's a key thing.
You have to find it because it's on the internet, right?
It is.
It's not. You're not forced to watch it on cable or something.
No, you're not.
Not
Mine
yet.
is.
Not yet.
I'm on cable.
You must take over cable. What do you think? Yeah. At any rate, we're talking about Warsaw. We were talking about Warsaw in the last installment, and you said, "May I encapsulate what you said?
Yes.
May I put the words back into your mouth?
Please do.
Is that okay? All right.
Your show.
So you said to me, that's very nice of you to remember.
It is. Yes.
You said
hard sometimes, but there we are.
It's my show, and my show only. Yeah. You said that the top 3 places you would take a visitor to Warsaw were the Old Town, the Warsaw Uprising Museum. I'm writing this down just to exercise my hand. And the third one was the you call it the embankment, but it's really the river.
Yes, but it's the
river walk.
It is, but it's that newly renovated.
It doesn't have a name, does it? Does it have a name?
Well, it does.
By the Wisła.
It does have a U, but I can't remember.
I can't remember what it is. Let's call it the embankment because that sounds very British and very you.
Yes. Well,
right?
I am British and I am me, so that's hardly surprising, isn't it?
It's hardly surprising. Stop doing this Prince Charles impression. Can I tell you my 3?
Yes, please do.
Exactly the same as yours.
Extraordinary.
No, it's not true. I have a different 3.
Yeah.
Okay, I should add something because I think your choices are excellent.
Thank you.
And I like all 3 of them. I'm not so keen on the embankment, but I realized that we were there recently.
We were.
When I took you to meet my friend, the legendary Aussie Bill.
Exactly.
From the Gold Coast.
Indeed, and we had a glass of beer on a boat, which is rather nice.
We had a glass of beer on a boat. And so that was fun. That was fun. But it's not something I do all the time. I like to ride my bike on the embankment.
Yes, well, there's some great cycle paths, of course.
And you do too, yeah. I would say all of those 3 things are great, but I like to go to Jinky Park.
Yes.
I love to walk there. I think it's a great spot. I think it's one of the finest parks that I've ever seen in a city center.
It's
I have to tell you, it is. And even in London, and nothing really to rival it.
No, having the palace on the water is a particularly fine example of architecture.
And you can see the Belvedere Palace when you're far away.
Exactly.
You have the nice restaurant, the Belvedere restaurant.
Of course,
so,
yes.
And they really have renovated all the palaces there. Yeah. So it's pretty amazing.
It is a very nice park, actually.
Yeah. And but I haven't seen, they have a lot of peacocks, but I haven't seen them lately. No. What happened to them?
I don't know. They weren't there last time, I was wondering.
It is peacockless.
Maybe they're hiding, and maybe it's too hot. Maybe they were gone for shade.
And they would screech, you know?
They would screech.
The screech of the wild peacock.
There's an interesting thing about peacocks, actually.
What's interesting about a peacock?
That peacocks,
besides, I mean,
they're serious. You'll think I'm making this up, but it's not entirely. I'm not making this. They're a very snobbish bird. So if you were to buy some peacocks for your back garden, you'd find they would migrate to the nearest large house.
They would migrate?
They will move along. Yeah, you can't keep peacocks in your garden because they go and they find the biggest house because they like.
They like big houses.
They like big houses, yeah.
So they're just big show-offs
exactly.
with all those feathers and everything.
Exactly.
All that screeching.
Those are the sort of birds they are. So.
Yeah, they're nice. I mean, kids love them.
Oh well, they're very. If they fan the tail, the male, they're very.
They're like a bird of paradise, don't they look like that? The females are rather dull, aren't they?
The females are rather dull. dull, yes.
And,
That's actually true.
coloring.
That's true in quite a lot of animal species.
Is that? Yeah.
Not human.
Does the men have to attract?
Yeah, so they need this exotic plumage.
I don't know anything about zoology, but
no,
I'm just.
But
this
that,
is off the
that
cuff.
generally, but that
Yeah.
generally is the case. That's why because the males have to attract the females.
Is that what it is?
So
Okay.
that's why they tend to be more exotic.
I'm going to make a note of that.
Yes.
Yeah. What did you say? The males have to. No, forget it.
No.
Let's move on. And so Jinky Park would be one of mine.
That's a good choice.
And to add, and I would say after that, I would say Jolibosch.
Jolibosch. Yeah.
Just to hang around.
It's nice, Jolibosch. There's a nice little park in Jolibosch as well, of course.
Yeah, and it's near the forest.
Near the forest, yes.
There's a lot of.
And it's quite. It gives
there.
you a feel for sort of a typical Warsaw suburb.
Yeah, but they also have some good pre-war streets,
They
like
do.
Winiowski Street is very nice.
I lived in Jolibosch for a while on such a street.
Where did you live?
Czarneckiego.
Oh, that's a famous street. Yeah.
Famous street, yes.
It's, by
and
the
of course,
square.
there you have the church where Father Popiełuszko was the priest.
That's also true.
So that's, again, it's another reason for going to visit Jolibosch.
Yeah, Father Popiełuszko, who was, of course, martyred under communism. He was murdered.
So Jolibosch is an interesting... But you're right, some of the architecture, if you wander around the streets and the villas...
It's actually where the Warsaw Uprising started.
Accidentally, yes.
Accidentally. I talked about that in one of the travel shows.
I read that in another book, and of course I met the man who accidentally started it in one of my shows.
What was his name?
Julian Kulski.
Right, you did a series of interviews with him.
And they were preparing for the Warsaw Uprising.
What was his name again?
Julian Kulski.
Julian
Kulski.
Kulski.
Yes.
Okay, so it's worth the folks looking that up.
Yeah, they can find that on YouTube. He's a very interesting man, actually.
Yeah.
He was 15 when it broke out. But
Amazing.
he was in Jolibosch, and he lived in Jolibosch, and they were fighting. And they were moving some weapons around in the afternoon.
Yeah.
And accidentally they came across some Germans. And so firing started. So he sort of jumped the gun by a couple of hours. But a very...
It's incredible, isn't it?
It's incredible to think that
he lived through that and he's here to talk about it now. It's
exactly.
amazing.
And he lived in Jolibosch. The family lived in Jolibosch before the war. He lived in Jolibosch during the war. And of course, in the Warsaw Uprising, as you know, the various areas of Warsaw became slightly separated from each other. And he fought in the Warsaw Uprising in Jolibosch as well.
Yeah.
So as he said...
So the uprising started in Jolibosch on
and
the 1st
that's where
of August.
the first shooting...
And it was the last, I believe the last area
It was one of the last
surrender.
yes. It was
if
one
not
of the,
the last.
yes. Mokotów was quite late as well.
Yeah. It was.
But they were lucky in Jolibosch and Mokotów
Yeah.
that by the time they surrendered, the Germans had agreed that they would treat the Home Army fighters as prisoners of war, and they wouldn't just wantonly murder the civilian population. Whereas the folk of Wola, which is a suburb to the west, which is where the real action against the uprising started, of course, this was actually horrific. And the German forces moved in and they just slaughtered everybody. There wasn't street-to-street, hand-to-hand fighting the German army against the Polish Home Army. It was just mass extermination, essentially. I mean, when you read about it, very harrowing, very sad. They would shoot men, women and children were all just shot. Or they'd throw hand grenades into cellars where they knew people were hiding.
Yeah.
I mean, when you read it now and in books, it is something that is so horrific. It's hard for us actually to really comprehend it. But it must have been, well, terrible for people who lived through it. Really. When some people, sorry, don't to dominate this show, the Warsaw Uprising, but when some of the people did escape from Wola and got to the old town, which was the next area which the Germans moved on to, folk who were living in the old town could not believe the stories they were told by those who'd escaped from Wola. They just couldn't believe that albeit in wartime, that sort of thing would actually happen in a European capital city.
I can see it made a huge impression on you.
Well, it did, because you don't often get to... we filmed
I need to move on in the time we've got left.
Yes.
I mean, because we can pick this up later.
Yeah.
But, and you've spoken so eloquently about it in your series.
Thank you.
But I'd say my last one will be markets in Warsaw.
Yes.
Just going to the markets, because it's amazing how much fresh produce, etc.
Well, the fresh produce here is very good, actually.
You know, it is. It
and
comes right in from the local
farms. And it benefits
farms.
from the fact that because of the history, a lot of Polish agriculture is still not covered in massive fertilizers.
Well, they still have
stuff is fresh. It still tastes.
It's like the French have a lot of small farms.
They do, and people bring it in from the countryside.
That's right, and they bring it right
fresh
into town.
And things like
people can't believe it when I send them pictures.
Things you don't think about, like if you find sort of people that made their own honey out in the country, that really tastes completely different from commercial honey. Really,
and you know what I'll throw in as well, because we're running to time now. checking out these Georgian bakeries, not Polish, but still worth checking out. The Georgians have made a huge move here. Georgia, of course, the home of wine.
Yes.
A great country.
Indeed.
And they have created a lot of Georgian bakeries around town and restaurants.
Okay.
I mean, they suddenly have burst upon the scene in the last few months, like 3 or 4 months, for the summer season. And I would say check out the Georgian bakeries, which are fast becoming a part of the culture. So there's a few things that you could do. You could go to Jinky Park, you could go and check out Żoliborz, go and check out the markets, and of course, you hit the history with the Old Town, the Warsaw Uprising, and the embankment. Okay, stay with us for more on the next episode of There's a Will. I was going to say Poland Daily Travel. Of There's a Will.
There's a Will. Traveling.
Talking about travel. Talking about travel with Nick Richardson. Okay, we'll look for you in the next episode.